Elizabeth Malvisi, Chairman of Babergh District Council, and I'll be chairing this meeting today. First of all, may I remind you of some of the domestic arrangements. Toilets are situated outside the meeting room opposite the stairs. Cold water is also available in the breakout area outside the meeting room. If the fire alarm should sound, please leave the meeting room by following the fire exit signs and congregate on the Ipswich Town Football Club training pitch. Do not re-enter the building until you are told it is safe to so do. Please switch off all mobile phones or turn them to silent. I'd like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The whole of the meeting will be filmed except where there are confidential or exempt items. If you make a representation to the meeting, you'll be deemed by the council to have consented to being filmed. By entering this meeting, you're also consenting to being filmed by the council and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting and/or training purposes. The council, members of the public, and the press may record, film, photograph, or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. And before I move to the agenda, please can I remind the councillors to stand when addressing your fellow councillors and addressing the chair. And can you please speak directly into the microphone? Thank you. Moving to the agenda, we now have apologies.
Thank you, Chair. We have received apologies from Councillors Grandon, McLaren and Rees.
Thank you very much. Do we have any declarations of interest by councillors on any item on the agenda? No declarations. I now move to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 23rd of May 2023, and this is for accuracy only. So does any councillor have an issue with accuracy of the minutes? Could I have a proposer, please? Councillor Parker, and a seconder? Councillor Hurren? All those in favour? I think that's unanimous. Sorry.
Yes.
I can inform you that that has been carried. I now move to BC/23/7, which is my announcement, and I'll stand to read it. As your chairman, on behalf of Babergh District Council, I attended the 20th birthday celebrations of the Kerners charity in Sudbury. It's a charity that provides counselling for boys and girls, men and women, who are experiencing mental health issues. I discovered that evening that the charity now treats more males than it does females. I also attended my first mayoral civic service in Felixstowe. And of course, July is the end of term, so I quickly went from there to attending 2 school prize-giving ceremonies. But before that, I attended Suffolk Day in the centre of Ipswich, and I have to say I was quite disappointed at the lack of co-chairs or co-mayors that were in attendance. The Royal Hospital School put on an excellent display of prizes, children with lots of get up and go and ambition and drive. It was really good to see. And that was quickly followed by Ipswich High School, which was much of the same. So I only hope that in this area having witnessed 2 schools that other schools share their values and move forward. Thank you. I invite Councillor Busby to make his announcements.
Good evening, first of all. I'd like to start my announcements by giving an update about our coalition administration's collective ambitions for this council term. The Green, Independent and Liberal Democrat coalition is built on a spirit of partnership and cooperation. It is absolutely central to our approach. This will be exemplified not just by how we work together as an administration, but how we work with our communities. We want to listen, collaborate and empower. As councillors will know, we have now agreed 3 broad themes that will drive our agenda and be at the coalition's heart. We shared these with you yesterday, so I won't go into detail, but perhaps Deborah or John would like to say a few words about them.
Thank you, Councillor Busby. I will just say a few words, if I may. It is clear that the electorate wanted to see changes to what we do and how we do it. But change is good, or at least inevitable. These shared priorities are both ambitious and exciting. They are a combination of continuity with many refreshing new ideas and a strong commitment to strengthen some of the nascent plans already proposed by the previous administration. We will support our residents, communities, businesses and environment through greater collaboration and a real desire to seek out innovative projects. Collaboration means with all partners, our communities and also other councils and organisations in the county. Yes, there is a greater focus on climate change mitigation, and I know some may be sceptical due to the potential costs, but we have made it clear that a strong economy based on thriving towns, encouraging new businesses and improving skills is the bedrock on which we will meet the climate challenges. The administration has work to do, and I'm pleased to be part of that and deliver against these priorities. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Busby. Thank you, Councillor Ward. We are an ambitious administration. As Councillor Ward says, we are committed to change, not for its own sake, but because we want to help improve the lives of our residents, the resilience of our communities, and make our contribution to the achievement of national priorities such as the drive to net zero and biodiversity recovery. Our vision is to see local communities empowered to develop and deliver solutions to the issues that matter to them. It is our role to bring these different stakeholders together, whether fellow local government organisations, business or the voluntary sector, to work with us to develop new solutions, to find the funding to make them a reality. We will do things differently and we will make a measurable difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. You can see these two are going to keep me on my toes, can't you? But we must now turn these priorities into meaningful actions to achieve our aims. Alongside this, work is getting underway to establish the Council's corporate plan objectives. Our resident survey, so important to help us understand the views and needs of our communities, launches this week, and our State of the District report will be published soon. There are also lessons to be learnt from the exemplary councils we heard from at the LGA conference a couple of weeks ago and during a visit to the Best Council in 2022, South Staffordshire. These will all influence and shape what we do to improve our district in the next 4 years. I'd also like to take this opportunity to welcome the news that the Tour of Britain will be coming to Babergh on Thursday the 7th of September, passing through a number of towns and villages, including Hadley, East Bergholt and Holbrook. It's a great opportunity to showcase our district and for communities to come together. And I'd just like to finish by saying I'd like to wish my ex-mother-in-law a happy 90th birthday for today.
Thank you, Councillor Busby. Does anybody have a question on a point of clarity? Councillor Beer?
Could I just ask, the timing sheet, does that include working with Conservatives?
We welcome all contributions from the Conservatives.
Thank you.
You weren't in the administration, but we're very welcome to contribute, and we hope you will in all the committees.
Thank you. Moving on, we now have to ask whether we've received notification of petitions in accordance with council procedure rules.
Thank you, Chair. None received.
Thank you. Questions by the public in accordance with council procedure rules.
Thank you, Chair. None received.
It's a bit repetitive. Questions by councillors in accordance with council procedure rules.
None received, Chair.
Thank you. We now move to item BC/23/8, Overview and Scrutiny Committee Annual Report 2022 to 2023 and Draft Work Plan 2023 to 2024. I would like to invite Councillor Wyman, Vice Chairman of Overview and Scrutiny Committee, to introduce this report and then hand over to the previous Chairman, Mr. John Hinton, for a full run-through and to answer any questions that members may have. Councillor Wyman.
Thank you, Chair. I made a few notes just in case. May I present paper BC 23/8, which is the Babergh Overview Scrutiny Committee Annual Report for 2022-2023, along with the draft work plan for 2023-24. This paper is for note, but I'm happy to try and answer any questions on the draft 23-24 work plan, which is attached to Appendix B. Firstly, I'd like to introduce Mr. John Hinton, a councillor with 20 years in Babergh, our previous ONS chair, to present the ONS Committee Annual Report for 22-23, which is enclosed within Appendix A. Thank you, Mr. Hinton.
Thank you, Councillor Wyman, Chair. Well, you've all seen a copy of the report. You will also note from the introduction that I've put for it that I do make an apology for the length of the report on the basis that I did say that I would try to get all reports down to a couple of sides of A4, but this is a bit longer, but then again it does have a lot more in it that I think is important. I would just like to comment on a couple of points within there. One is we looked at the parking strategy and put some recommendations through to Cabinet, and that involved having constant updates on its progress, which I see are not in the new work plan, so I would respectfully suggest that they should be added to the work plan for the coming year. I'm also pleased to see that the grilling's not the right word, but I suspect it might turn into it, of Anglian Water on the environmental issues concerning sewage, etc., is on the work plan. And I would just like to draw the members, and particularly members of the new committee's attention to the fact that it was reported in the paper on the 13th of July that the Environment Agency's annual report had just been produced, and within it, it said that more than half the serious pollution incidents where there is a serious, extensive or persistent impact on the environment, people or property were linked to, no prizes for guessing, Thames Water, but also Anglian Water, in that there were 17 serious incidents for Thames Water and 11 for Anglian Water. So give them a good roasting when they come through. They've got a lot to answer for. The other thing is that the parking I've already mentioned, and I think that covers all the things that I thought ought to be added to it and wanted to just highlight within this. And I'm quite happy to take any questions on the report, although I would say that the person who did the most work on this report is Alicia Norman, and she's probably going to be the one who's better able to answer the questions even than I am, because she's got a finger on the pulse every day.
Does any member have any question? Councillor Maybury.
Thank you. I'm just going to make a comment because I am not defending Anglian Water at all, but Mr. Hinton, as he is now, has just made a comment about roasting Anglian water. Actually, the sewerage issue is probably a Babergh issue in water, because we are the authority that's allowed planning to have water runoff go into sewers. And I'm not talking now, I'm talking in the past. So I think we have to be a little careful when we try and lay the blame all at somebody's door, when possibly that's not completely right. Now, I haven't got a whole range of Babergh planning documents in front of me from the 70s, but I do know that water runoff that actually goes into the sewers is the biggest issue of why a lot of sewage actually goes into our rivers and seas. I'm not saying it's a good idea, I think it's a terrible idea, but I just think we ought to be a bit careful sometimes that we are not apportioning blame to someone when perhaps it's not all on their doorstep. Thank you.
Councillor Hinton, Mr. Hinton, I apologise.
Yeah, I'm not getting any money for this. Just to come back on that and say the word roasting was used from the point of view of the intensity of the questions and approach to Anglian Water and the approach that they take to these things. Having served for probably 15 years on the planning committee, I know the changes that have happened in terms of development and where it's taken place. Most years up until last year, I haven't seen the report from last year, 60% of the development took place, Babergh's development took place in the villages rather than in the towns. Now obviously that's going to put a strain on sewage systems, but within the report for each planning application is a section whereby Anglian Water are consulted as a statutory authority as to whether or not they have capacity to deal with it. Now, building regulations have changed several times over the last few years. When I bought my first house, building regulations said that all surface water from the house should be directed into soakaways in the front and rear gardens, not into the sewers. When they privatised the water companies, they changed the building regs, and the water authority said, please let us have the water from these houses because it will help flush out the sewers and it will also give us a throughput. And so building regulations changed. So it wasn't Anglian Water's fault, they requested it, but it was building regulations that changed. They've changed again now in that, of course, we've got SUDs. And for those that are not familiar with the anachronisms, sustainable urban drainage systems, where water is supposed to go to. But that doesn't obviously help the historical situation where you've got a lot of houses that were built with their roof water, etc., going straight into the sewers. Now, anybody who's got a house that has got water going straight into the sewers from their downpipes, they can get a rebate of £35 a year from Anglian Water if they divert all that water into water butts and save it and use it in the garden. I've got 11 water butts collecting water around my house, and I get £35 a year back from Anglian Water, because what doesn't go into those water butts goes into the old septic tank at the bottom of the garden, which is filled with rubble and used as a soakaway. So there are ways around it. So Anglian Water had plenty of chance to turn around and say, look, we want a contribution from developers to increase the capacity at our sewage plants, etc., if they felt that that was needed. And when we see sewage runoff happening when we've got dry weather, then that, I'm afraid, means that more roasting needs to be done during the cross-examination of Anglian Water.
Councillor Davis, you had a question, and perhaps Councillor Hurren?
Yeah, well, I think Mr. Hinton has absolutely underlined the point I was going to make about him as a councillor and as a person, totally thorough, totally professional, knows his stuff, and for 20 years he's been doing that, so I'd like to pay tribute to the report that he's produced for ONS, for the work that he did last year. I was on the other side of it, he may remember, and I was up in front of you and your committee, you know, but you're very fair, very decent, and produced results as well. So from me and possibly other councillors, thank you very much. Great job done over a long period of time.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Councillor Wyman, do you have anything else to add?
Nothing, Chair, other than to say Councillor Maybury's point on the water side is very relevant, and it's something we have actually already spoken about in relation to the planning. I think probably it should be an aspiration and ambition for the council at some point in time to take on the process of dealing with that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Now, this report is for noting. Thank you very much, Mr. Hinton. It's nice to see you here again. No, there's no, it's just for noting. Can you make it brief, please?
Talking of brief, you know I like brief reports, but I have to say, I thought this was fantastic. I loved the layout and the design. It was very clear, very easy to read, and so congratulations. I could stand longer reports like that. For those new members who probably don't know what ONS is all about, I tend to think of the Cabinet as the heart of the Council, but ONS is the head. It looks, it listens, it questions. It's really important. Now, all of these committees you can go along to. If you want to know what's going on in Babergh, the ONS committee is as good a one as any to go along to. So, plug over.
Thank you very much, Councillor Busby. Okay, as I said previously, this is for noting. Now we move to BC/23/9, changes to the Constitution, and I invite the monitoring officer to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. Very briefly, the report seeks approval for the Council's Constitution to be amended to reflect the intention of the Council that the appointment of the leader be made on an annual basis. As the Constitution stands at the moment, it only allows 4 yearly approvals. The additional words in the Constitution will only be, or as the Council shall decide, which gives the Council the option to, at future levels or any time the Council desires, to change the annually, every 2 years, 3 years or 4 years. So the option is there, but this is purely and simply to sort out the intention that the Council at the last meeting to have an annual leader. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Now, could I have a proposer for this report, Councillor Maybury, and a seconder, Councillor Plum? Okay. Now we move to questions. Councillor Riley.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. As a point of order, I don't remember noting the draft work plan for 23-24. We heard the magnificent report and we complimented the people who put it together, but we do have Appendix B, the draft work plan. We've asked it to be noted. It hasn't been reintroduced and hasn't been discussed. I don't remember it being noted. I stand always to be corrected.
It was part of BC 23/8, and it is just the work plan, so it will alter, and we've moved on from that item on the agenda.
Madam Chairman, do we have an opportunity then, now or later, to change the work plan?
Yeah? All right, you're a member of the committee,
I am indeed.
so you will have the opportunity.
That's nice. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, we now move to questions on the town and parish elections. No?
On the Constitution change.
Oh, sorry. I've lost the place here.
It's here, yeah, Chair.
Oh, yeah.
Just move to questions.
So we are moving to questions, so I got that bit right. Okay. Any questions, anybody? Councillor Busby.
Yes, does or as the council shall decide also come under 2 months, 2 weeks and 3 days and 14 hours? Does that come under that as well? Or is it only every annual year?
50.
Thank you. Good question, Councillor Busby. No, it's annually, so 1 year, 2 year, 3 year or 4 year. No. No, well, there are other provisions. There are other provisions within. I think it's Article 4 with regard to that.
Councillor Holt?
Thank you. Do I take it from this paper that the promise of during the last term that we will have a discussion on the committee-based system is coming forward, and this isn't going to prevent that discussion, because we were promised last term that that would come forward early in this administration for us all to debate whether we continue with the cabinet system or revert back to a committee-based system. This proposal seems to me as if we're not going to do that. We're almost cutting that off, and by allowing an annual change, we're not going to have that debate. So can I have some reassurance that that debate will occur, and a time frame, please?
Certainly the debate will take place. We thought that we ought to give new members into such a high number of new members this time an opportunity to experience at least one of the systems, i.e. the cabinet system, before we make the decision as to whether revert to committees or not. So it will come forward in the fullness of time.
Okay, Councillor Parker wants to come in and Councillor Holt afterwards. I'll have Councillor Parker first, then your comment, and then the monitoring officer. But I think we need to clarify that this is to address the rotation of leaders because of a coalition structure, whereas moving from cabinet to committee was something from the past that raised, discussed, and will come forward in due course. But Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In which case, I'll try and be brief and not labour the point. But actually, to pick up on Councillor Holt's point, actually, as we have, as Councillor Busby has mentioned it, what actually is the mechanism for having that discussion? That presumably has to be proposed, does it not, by Council?
Proposed by Council for a report with a report. But then that would be the cabinet. Councillor Holt.
I seem to remember that the previous administration debated that, and there was a proposal put forward and it was voted and it was accepted by that previous administration that this debate would occur within a set time frame of a new administration being formed, which that has now been formed, and yet we have not had any discussion, any communication from the current administration as to when that debate will occur. So could we please look back and confirm that the previous administration did have a vote, the vote was carried, and that was promised that this debate would occur within, I believe, a certain number of months of a new administration.
Okay, Councillor McCraw, then Councillor Beer.
Yes, I recall the discussion on that subject myself, and as I recall, it was a matter that was obviously a decision of the previous administration. This is a new administration. I think, as Councillor Busby has pointed out, it's only reasonable for new councillors to experience the current system and get some idea of how it can work. I think a certain amount of time is reasonable. My understanding would have been that a report would be prepared, presumably from the monitoring officers and the governance department of the council, and then be brought to the council for discussion, looking at the various options. And I recall a previous monitoring officer looking at a variety of models. There is a paper of about 2 years or so back, I think under Emily Yule, which proposed a variety. I was on a sort of sliding scale, and I believe that paper could be revived and brought back to council. But as a specific time frame, I don't think it was actually ever set. But I think the point is made quite reasonably.
It's not on the agenda.
No, it's not. It's also a separate issue from the one we're discussing tonight. So if it's brought back, it's brought back.
I gave the member a bit of leeway, and you've taken, give a man a mile and he'll take the whole bloody rope. Yes. So it's not on the agenda. Councillor Beer, if you can answer briefly, following my comment.
I note your comments. I agree mainly with Councillor McCaw. It was debated. It was promised that it would come to the new council. I think all members are aware of that. I don't think it should be delayed any longer than it needs to be. I accept what you're saying, that perhaps they need it, but I think a lot of members are used to working in committees and groups. But
we have the document.
yeah, you've got
that
the
we
document,
can read out.
but it must be looked at sooner rather than
Well,
later. Thank you.
Sooner than now? Yes.
So I've looked it up to save the speculation because I thought that might be useful. So the council, this was what was resolved by full council, and this was back in March 2022, I believe. So that council considers the findings of the Constitutional Working Group and resolves to retain the leader and cabinet model of governance and implement additional measures to engage with all members of Babergh District Council. And the critical bit is, and agree that a further review of governance arrangements be undertaken after the ordinary elections in May or in 2023. So you're absolutely right, we are now after those elections. Officers can now look at that and consider how best to bring that forward. I would suggest, like last time, that would involve creation of a constitutional working group to look at it, because trying to do that in detail at full council is probably not the right way to go. Happy to take that away and do that with suitable pace.
Okay. It's not on the agenda. We need to move forward.
In response to Councillor Pear's comment, in terms of when it needs to be done, my understanding is that it wouldn't be, if we decided on a change, it wouldn't happen until May or the new financial year anyway. So there is no point in rushing it tomorrow, because well, if we make the decision tomorrow, it just sits there for 10 months. So we will do it, and it will be implemented, if need be, before the next council year.
Yeah. Okay. You wish to make a comment, Councillor Maybury? Please be brief.
Well,
We are moving on.
it's a point of order, and I'm sorry to our Chief Executive, but you actually do have a Constitution Working Party, because it's me, it's Councillor Ward, it's Councillor Jameson, and there's somebody else, and I can't remember who it was, and I'm terribly sorry. So there is one. There is one. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, councillors and officers. Moving forward. Do you wish to say anything before we move to debate? We've had debate. No, to the vote. To the vote, yeah, okay. No? No. No. Okay, councillors, can you go on to ModGov and place your vote? You know how that works, the big cross in the right-hand side. And then you click voting. And it's highlighted.
Councillor Riley, can I take your vote, please? Thank you.
Mine's not started. Is it blue? Oh, is that one?
We're just waiting for 2 more people. Councillor Smith, can I take your vote? Oh, it's just come through. That's fine. Thank you. Chair, that's 27 for and 1 vote against and 1 conflict of interest.
Okay, so that is carried. This one. Yep. We now move to BC/23/10, Greenhouse Gas Report 2021 to 2022, and I would like to invite Councillor Potter to introduce this item and to move the recommendations. Councillor Potter.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair. This is my first report, the Greenhouse Gas Report for 2021. The main points that I've put together for this report, it's 13 pages in total. The organisational boundaries and scopes. The organisational boundary has been taken to be those emissions from the council's own headquarters, the touchdown points, the street lighting vehicles owned by council, third parties, delivering council services that result in emissions of greenhouse gases. There have been 3 scopes that have been defined by the protocol for accounting and reporting purposes. The first scope, oil boilers, premises gas, leisure centre gas, petrol, diesel, diesel grounds, gas oil. Scope 2, premises, electricity, street highways, lighting, leisure centre activity. And the third scope, staff business travel, third-party diesel, third-party HVO, T&D premises, electricity, T&D street highways, electricity, and finally leisure centre gas and the gas extruded from Endeavour House. This brings about a total gross emissions of 4,754.9 tonnes of carbon emissions. The greenhouse gas emissions also is included by sector. It includes waste fleet, leisure centre, remaining estates, Endeavour House, business travel and street lighting. The largest source of emissions came from 4 council-owned leisure centres. These were run by Abbeycroft Leisure and Everyone Active. They accounted for 1,636.7 tonnes of CO2 emissions, or 34% of total carbon emissions from council activities, which we will see in Table 2.1 in the report. In Chart 2.2, there was a marginal increase in electricity. However, there was a problem with the natural gas since it has now returned to pre-pandemic levels. In waste and refuse collection, the third largest source of emissions within the council's portfolio was the waste refuse collection service at 826.8 tonnes of CO2 per annum. From August 2021, the waste fleet began to use hydro-treated vegetable oil, which has a far lower emissions factor than standard diesel. The emissions factor associated with HVO is not included in the calculation. It is a temporary measure to reduce emissions, and a longer-term low-carbon solution is presently being sought. In Chart 2.4, you'll see there's a summary of the CO2e emissions for waste services during the last 4 years. The impact of moving to HVO since August 2021 can be seen in the decrease in emissions over 2021 and 2022. In the report, it also mentions the transition to carbon neutrality. The trajectory from Chart 3.1 shows a baseline starting from 2018 to 90 of 5,804.1 tonnes of CO2 towards carbon neutrality in 2030, which is of course the net zero that we all want to get to. In 2019-20, this rose to 5,820 tonnes of CO2 emissions before falling to 4,821 in 2021. In 2021 and 22, this saw a marginal decrease on the previous year to 4,754.9 tonnes of CO2. However, this must be seen against the backdrop of lifting pandemic restrictions and the reopening of leisure centres. It is therefore very encouraging that the CO2 emissions have not returned to pre-pandemic levels. It will, though, be very challenging to maintain this level of reduction as the economy begins to recover and activities return to pre-pandemic levels. Meeting the carbon neutral target by 2030 will rely on the successful implementation of the Council's Carbon Reduction Management Plan, which will require a significant level of funding. So forecasting decarbonisation. It is not possible to forecast an accurate picture of the level of funding that will be required, and these determinations will need to be made on a project-by-project basis. However, it is possible to use a general rule using various tools. PSDs use a funding cap limit of £500 over tonnes of CO2 over a lifetime of 15 years overall of the project. To see if the projects are worthwhile, the recent project councils delivered using PSDS grants was a saving of worth £330 over the tonnes of CO2 emissions. The PSDS grant was in a total of 1.4 million and will deliver annual savings of circa 280 tonnes of CO2. In Table 3.0, this provides a summary of forecast level of investment needed using the following assumptions. The prices are set at 2021 levels, as the PSDS evaluation tool is designed for evaluating projects to retrofit buildings. Only from buildings are included in the forecast. It is assumed that carbon saved will only come from decarbonising the heating of the leisure centres and the built estate. Solar PV has now been fitted to most roof spaces in leisure centres and systems to decarbonise heating. These include air source heat pumps, which will be seen on an uplift in energy consumption. So reducing CO2 emissions from delivered electricity has been excluded. Endeavour House has been excluded as well, as the council has no control over the building's development strategy. It is assumed that it will be feasible to decarbonise the heating of all buildings. And now to part of the report. Okay, well, we're very close to the end. I will only just go to the recommendations, therefore. And the recommendations are that the contents of the GHG emissions report, Appendix A to the report, be noted, and that there is a task and finish group that is established to review and refresh actions in the carbon reduction management plan. I think I will have to leave it there.
Thank you very much. Before I open it up to questions, we are being filmed and it is going out over the internet. So can you explain what PSDs are for those who are watching us?
This is language that's very new to me as well, Chair, so I would like to defer to my associate.
Okay.
It's Public Sector Decarbonisation Fund, Public Sector Decarbonisation.
Okay, thank you. Right then, councillors, we move to questions. Any? Sorry?
Second.
Oh, I need the seconder first because Councillor Potter's proposing. Are you going to second, Councillor Register? Yes, thank you very much. Super. Questions? Over to you, and then Councillor Beer.
It's another terminology question, really. In this report, it mentions touchdown points. And I asked two separate communities what these were, because none of us worked out what it was. And everybody thought it referred to American football. So can somebody define what a touchdown point is? We actually know now, but there are far better terminologies for it, such as co-working space and hot desking, than touchdown point, which is nobody understood, and these people worked in 3 different government departments.
Okay. Do I take it that touchdown points is the real Okay.
I can try and attempt to answer that one, Tim. It seems to be that the touchdown points you refer to are remote working locations, which are between each and every set of points, so they can be designated as a touchdown point. But other than that, I think they are, as I say, they are just remote working locations, I think. That's my understanding of it.
Thank you. Councillor Beer, you put your hand up, and then Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Ford, for that report. It was very good. I did manage to follow it. I don't say I understood it all, but I did follow it quite well. And this may not be down to you, but page 68, table 3, overview of solar carport project Kingfisher. It goes on to say the system was commissioned in September 2022. An evaluation of the system's performance will be carried out once the system has been running for 6 months. Well, that has been stop, go, up and running, and I don't know what's happening. Has this ever happened? Has the system performed well? And have we got an evaluation that you can tell us? because, you know, most people in the Sudbury Great Cornard area think it's a big white elephant sitting there. Thank you.
I think your question could be answered by Fiona.
Yes, the solar carports are operational. There was a temporary issue with them, which everyone, I'm sure, will be aware of, that some of the components were replaced, which did lead to part of them being closed down, but the systems have been operational since the main works were complete. We are still waiting for, well, it won't show in this report, but in the next report, which is being drafted at the moment, we will start to see the outcome from that intervention.
So we will get a report back. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Next hand that went up, Councillor Davis.
Yeah,
Okay.
Mine was really just a response to the question about touchdown points. I was a portfolio holder at the time when they were really started to be introduced, and it was part of Babergh's flexible working, which allowed officers, as has been explained, different places that they could go to work and not necessarily have to come to, because it was when we were moving from Hadley to Endeavour House. And they were called touchdown points quite really just because officers could just touch down into an area and do their work remotely. It's as simple as that, yeah. So the touchdown at the time was a popular phrase used by officers at the time.
Now I have Councillor Maybury, then Councillor Riley, then Councillor Jameson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. At the moment, I've got 4 questions. Would you like them one after the other?
We're in debate, so there's only one. You've got 3 minutes.
No.
Questions. Oh, sorry, we're in questions.
Oh, we are in questions.
Yeah.
That's all right then. My first is, and I say this with a lot of experience, and it would be nice to know if any other councillor here has an air source heat pump. Oh, lovely. Few of us, 4 of us. Well, there only used to be me, so I'm delighted. So my first question is, we are using, no they're not, noisy, we are using a lot of natural gas for our council-built estate. Has there been any investigation into moving these into using air source heat pumps? And before somebody says, well, it depends on the builder of the property, I understand that. But surely we should be moving to that, as I'm sure my colleagues here will also agree with me that if they are run properly, mine is very efficient and very cheap to run. And I'm sure other people will hopefully agree with me. So why are we not doing that? That's question 1. Thank you.
Again, this is a question I will refer to Fiona.
So in the Council's Carbon Reduction Management Plan, there's certainly consideration to look at getting as many council estate properties as possible onto alternative methods of fuel. As you've already pointed out, it's not that easy with some of them. So some of the council's estate, for example, are the depots, and obviously there's other conversations going on around the depots. So it's whether the investment is right at the right time. But certainly there's a new social housing public sector decarbonisation fund being just about to be launched. That's something we very much will look at in terms of how we can introduce further air source heat pumps as appropriate into some of the council's estate, particularly things like sheltered housing.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I still have Councillor Riley and Jameson.
Thank you. My fan club will be watching and asking me, and will be telling me off if I haven't asked enough questions. We also talk on page 65 about Endeavour House. Now, we're in this building, and I'm sure you all are aware so far that the building is either really hot or, well, you get to winter and it's really cold. And it says in this last sentence, as such, these emissions are reportable but outside the council's direct control. I understand that, but how much emphasis are we putting on the people that actually own this building to make sure that this is better run, i.e. that they have, I think it's called a heat exchange system, which would be absolutely marvellous for this building. and some of the heat in the summer could obviously be used to heat places that do need heating, such as care homes and hospitals. And that's during the summer. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Maybury. I can only share your optimism that that is the case with Endeavour, and we do have that kind of system. I can only refer for more accurate detail to Fiona once more again about what that will be.
So I believe there have been some conversations with Suffolk County Council with regard to Endeavour House, but the reality is we are leaseholders of the space that we have in Endeavour House. We don't have in a legal sense we're not party to whatever method they use to heat the building. I will take away your question and ask our Director of Estates and Assets to see what those conversations have been recently.
And hopefully we will have a reply, all councillors, please. Now, my next question is also on page 65, and it's about council staff claiming travelling expenses, which seems a lot to me. And I'm actually going to put my next two questions together. And it's the same with councillors claiming travelling expenses. We, and I'm sure it's the same for staff, we claim travelling expenses because the building, when we have to attend here, for some of us, is such a long way away from home. And I think that the public needs to understand that not all of us are on suitable public transport systems, that we can use that and not claim mileage. Now, some of us do actually bring in passengers, so we do try and share. But my question to you, I think it will I'm sorry, Councillor Potter, I think it will have to go to Fiona, is how are we going to help reduce all these mileages? Thank you.
I think this will have to go to Fiona.
Again, we have a couple of documents that we're working to. One is the Carbon Reduction Management Plan, which I have already mentioned. The other one is our Sustainable Travel Plan. And we're already doing quite a lot of work with staff. We engaged an organisation called Mobility Ways, who did some survey work with staff to find out how they get to work, for example. And we're using that data at the moment to have a look and see what incentives we can introduce or support mechanisms to persuade staff to move around in different ways. But it's not easy, as you quite rightly point out. We're a rural district, and you know there aren't always buses or alternative forms of transport, so it's very much work in progress.
Well, I've got other people waiting to ask questions. If you'd
It's not
like
a question,
to join
it's an answer.
Your answer, okay.
The figures that you quoted for 2021, which we all know was a strange year for business, since it covered the whole of the pandemic. So there was quite a significant change in the way that staff worked. And from that point onwards, we've seen a much big increase in working from home. So I'd expect the figures probably to be reduced by that, and the fact that we hold online meetings as well.
Okay, Councillor Riley, you had a question.
Yeah, Chair, I have actually two questions. And the first question, of course, is if we look at page 66, that was the entire paper, we are looking at the figures for 21 to 22. And so we are now looking at figures which are, what, 15 months old? And the question is, where are we now with 22 to 23? Because it is at least 90 days since the close of the year, the municipal year. And the question is, why don't we have up-to-date figures? Why are we rattling around asking you to note figures that are 15 months old? You know, why are we doing this?
Yeah, unfortunately. Did you? Right, I'll refer to Fiona once again.
So Yes, I accept this is an older report. We are working on the current 22-23 emissions at the moment. There is a time delay because you have to gather all the data, and so you can't publish it on the day that at the end of the 22-23 period. We're expecting to bring that report back later in the autumn, so we'll catch up, so to speak. But you're right, these figures are a little bit historic, but we are required to publish them by government on our website.
If I can just add to that, if I'd been able to cover to the rest of the end of the report, I would have also said that this was due to go into progress in September, so the autumn. Sorry if you don't like the answer.
Jameson, you have a question, and then Councillor Councillor Riley. Oh, sorry.
My second question goes back to page 66, and it is table chart number 3.1. And I appreciate now these figures are, 15 months out of date. Nevertheless, 21-22 indicates we were failing to meet our targets. We were moving away from this straight line progression that was decided upon. And what we haven't heard, what I would like to hear actually, is are we back on target? Are we likely to sort of stay away from it? Where are we?
I think we agree. We would all like to be on track for the carbon neutral aspiration. We've had COVID that actually worked in our favour rather than against it. We have natural gas, which obviously is rising. We would like to reduce that in any way we could see fit. This will require a lot of investment in order to bring it back into control. And we're all very aware of that. Fiona, would you like to add anything?
Thank you, Councillor. Only really to point out that these figures, I think someone mentioned earlier, these figures are on the back of 2 years effectively of pandemic, when many of the actions in the carbon reduction management plan didn't perhaps move as quickly as they could because we had to deploy staff onto other activities. I fully expect to see the 2022-23 trajectory to be much more positive.
Okay. Right, I've got Councillor Jameson, Councillor Davis, and I'm sorry, I don't know your name. Councillor Shaw. Right, okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've only got one question. I see that the emissions derived from third parties are in scope 3, where we have little control. But are we using our influence to challenge these contractors on their plans to carbon neutral, to be carbon neutral? And if not, can we start challenging organisations in the supply chain?
Yeah, I would like to have Fiona to answer that.
Yes, we are where we can, although there's more we can do, to be honest. So we obviously work closely with businesses, particularly around the grant schemes that we've got. So we have a net zero grant available in Babergh at the moment. I have to say the take-up has not been as good as we would have liked, in spite of lots of promotion of it. So we will continue to push that grant scheme hard. I think there's probably more we can do at a Suffolk level as well, as part of the Suffolk Climate Change Partnership, to really drill down and work with businesses to support them. Our biggest challenge, of course, is that we've got a high number of small businesses, and they're already grappling with challenges around cost of living, etc. So it's how we can help them to see the benefits of switching to things like greener fuels, etc. Because they also save the money potentially, as well as being better for the environment.
Thank you. Councillor Davis.
Yeah, thanks. My question really is, these figures are fairly old, but surely this should have been foreseen. I mean, Councillor Maybe at the beginning of her remarks talked about her fan club and, you know, the public have the right to know, and she's concerned about how far she has to come to the office from Lavenham. But is it worth reminding the public that it was Councillor Maybury and her Conservative colleagues that forced the move from Hadley to Endeavour House in the first place? Did they not factor this in at the time? Did they not look at this? Did they not take notice of that? And my question is, do you regret the decision to force us out of Hadley into? You did. You used your numbers to come out. Thank you.
Point of order. This, I think, is unfair, Councillor Davis, because if you were there at the time... Yep, fine, you voted against it.
Councillor Maybury, it's not a point of order.
It is a point of order, because he is accusing us of doing something as a Conservative group that we didn't.
It's a personal explanation.
No, well, no, it's not. It's a point of order, and it's unfounded.
And it's a comment in the debate. So I come to Councillor Saw. Councillor Holt after Councillor Saw.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I would like to ask a question about carpooling for... Sorry, I have to stand, yes, I've forgotten. We spoke about travel costs for staff, and I wondered whether one of the initiatives that you were looking at would be carpooling for staff, and whether that could be achieved without too much disruption. And my second question regards Endeavour House. Having been in business myself and been a tenant of a large building in the City of London, I did find that when I pooled my concerns with other tenants, the landlord was much more liable to listen to us, particularly, and I think this is particularly the case in the current environment, where commercial landlords are having a very tough time of it. And certainly would not like to lose any tenants or have disruption with tenants and their... So if you could respond to that, I would be grateful.
If I deal with the second one first, I've just been messaging Emily Atack, actually, as the assets lead, and she tells me there was a meeting today with Endeavour House representatives to talk about energy, so hopefully that's set us on the road to some positive discussions. In terms of carpooling, do you mean sharing of staff? I mean, I think obviously we do encourage that anyway, and certainly this, you know, we do it through internal comms messages, etc. We do also have pool cars. Suffolk County Council have pool cars that staff can use, so we're hoping to make that a little bit more, get that out more internal comms so that people know about it, because I think some people perhaps didn't know about it. So there are things we are doing. I think as part of sort of refreshing the carbon reduction management plan, I think we need to perhaps move some of those areas of work further up, higher up the agenda, really, in terms of staff interventions. I think there's been a big focus historically on the big items that clearly have brought some quick wins, but I think we need to now do more work with our staff to encourage them to look at alternative modes of transport.
For you, and then we have to move to debate.
Thank you. I won't be making any cheap political points like Councillor Davis, but no doubt there'll be an article written tomorrow about it. My question is, the PV panels on all our own council estates are getting quite old now. And have we got a plan in place to modernise that PV panel system? Because the development in the PV panels has grown significantly since they were first installed. And I'm sure through our estate we could gain a greater benefit by renewing those panels and the batteries that store that energy? And would that make a significant impact on what we are trying to achieve?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Holt. Yes, I do believe that will make a huge improvement. There is scope for that to improve what we already have that is being worked through. So you'll see more of that in the following report, the 22-23, that we are putting together a plan for that. I don't know if Fiona would like to expand on it.
So I don't think as such a budget has been set aside to replace them, which I think was your question. What I would say is they are performing quite well. So having seen the data a couple of weeks ago, they are performing at a good level. However, that's one of the things that we're going to be looking at in the public sector decarbonisation bid that hopefully we'll be able to put in to government towards the end of the year. Both a rollout, but also potentially looking at how we can upgrade them using things like battery storage, if it's viable.
Now, councillors, do you wish to enter into debate, or shall we just ask Councillor Potter to do a summing up? Councillor Ward?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. At the risk of scratching an open wound, I would like to remind members about the reasons for the move to this building. We had two councils operating out of half-used buildings, about 15, 16 miles apart, officers travelling between the two. Both buildings were old and unfit for purpose. This building may have some problems with its energy performance, but it's nothing compared with the problems Courts Lane would have had. No. So we are well shot of that place, and this is a much better location for us. So yes, the majority of the council voted for the move 7 years ago, 2016 we voted, and moved in 2017. It was the right decision. So can we just keep the Endeavour House move out of this discussion? It's a long time in the past now. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we move to debate? You wish to debate. Councillor Holt.
Well, it was more a comment, really. I think there's a lot of work gone over the last 4 years, and you personally have been a credit to achieving that. I think the work at Kingfisher, the solar carports, which Councillor Beer was a bit critical of, I think it's a great initiative and something we may be able to build on. So we've done an awful lot, and I think we should congratulate the previous administration and those that are still here for achieving that. And I look forward to achieving a lot more in the next 4 years. So it's more a statement, but I think we should congratulate ourselves on what we've done and look forward to the future and achieving even greater things.
Councillor Horan.
Yes, Chairman, thank you. Just a comment, really, in relation to what Councillor Holt said and was answered. There was a question about PV panels and things and what they produced. I can state, and I would know this from my audit and standards role, that the PV panels on our own council houses in the last financial year brought in £250,000 in the feed-in tariff, £350,000. Now, I was the councillor along with Clive Arthey who started this project, and I'm quite proud that it's still running and earning us quite a bit of money. Our budget would be a bit sick without it, so that's something to be proud of. I weren't sure, Councillor Holt, whether you were luring to that or not, because there are other things. You mentioned council estates, but these are right across the Babergh Mid-Suffolk council houses, and they're still a damn good earner, and we should be thankful. And we need to expand that project even more, and it needs to be put on the industrial estate roofs as well, because that's where the real feed-in tariffs lies. Leave the fields for growing our crops and vegetables. Stick the PV panels on the industrial roofs, please. Thank you. Just a point of clarity.
Would you like to sum up?
Yes, I would. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Maybury.
Thank you. Yes, you're quite right, Councillor Hurren, about the PV panels, and that they do give an income to us, and we should be very, very grateful for that. And they also help, obviously, our residents too. But can I just point out to you also that it was Frank Lawrenson who was previous cabinet member for the environment who actually proposed PV panels. So he also needs a mention, I think, because that's one of the things that he did follow through, and many residents are very grateful for it. Thank you.
Thank you,
Councillor
Chair.
Potter, it's definitely over to you now.
Thank you. So, as this report was, of course, impacted severely by COVID, this new report that is incoming in the autumn, the 2022-23 report, the impact of the projects specified throughout, these will definitely be visible to all. We do accept and acknowledge, I believe, more needs to be done, which is why the councils are rolling out HVO to fleet vehicles, to introduce more solar PV to more council buildings, to install 25 charge points in the district for electric vehicles. Those in the latter specify targeting for households requiring the on-street charging facilities. As part of the recommendations in the report, the Task and Finish Group, which I believe is cross-party, will review actions in the carbon reduction management plans and make recommendations to accelerate the programme of intervention towards the eventual target of meeting net zero. Thank you.
I'll now ask the Corporate Manager, Governance and Civic Office to conduct the electronic vote.
Thank you, Chair. That is now turning blue for councillors to cast their vote. Councillor Riley, can I take your vote, please?
I abstain.
You abstain. Thank you.
Point of order, Madam Chairman. It actually says on here, under 3.1, that the contents of the Greenhouse Gas Emissions Report 2021-22, Appendix A to the report be noted. So there's not a vote.
There is 3.2 is actual decision.
Yeah.
But we can't,
Chair,
vote for both.
We can, yeah. It's been taken together, and the second recommendation is that a Task and Finish Group is established to review and refresh actions in the Carbon Reduction Management Plan, and that vote is taken together. Thank you, Chair. That is 28 votes for and 1 abstention.
Thank you. So that's carried. We now move to BC/23/11, review of the delivery of the 2023 District, Town and Parish Council elections. I'd like to invite the Chief Executive to introduce this report. Mr. Charles. Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and good evening again, councillors. I'm presenting this report to you as returning officer rather than chief executive. As you know, as it was reported at the time, we experienced some issues when running the district, town and parish elections this year. And I'd like to apologise again for the errors that were made. And you may have seen that apology has also been sent to all of our towns and parishes. In response to the issues that we experienced before polling day, I commissioned an external review from the Chief Executive of the Association of Electoral Administrators, and that was done in consultation with the Electoral Commission as well. We've also conducted, as you'll see from the report, we've also conducted an extended internal wash-up review, as we do after every election, but on this occasion it was done with belt and braces, so to speak, given the issues we'd experienced. And both of those reports, both those reviews, are attached to the agenda Appendix A and B, respectively. Reassuringly, the external report confirms that the district, town and parish elections were safely and securely delivered, and that there were no inherent failings in our election processes. And the review also notes that issues were all resolved efficiently and effectively, and that there were many mitigating issues that are unlikely to occur again in the future. However, whilst that is of comfort, I've taken personal responsibility for these issues and take them extremely seriously, and we've already begun to address many of them that are raised within the reports. It's essential for the council, and you know this, so you don't need to hear this from me, but it's essential for the council and for local democracy that everyone can have complete confidence in our election processes. And with that in mind, the Electoral Commission have updated, since this report was published, they have updated me to confirm, and I'll read this out, that following their moderation process, including a review of the errors by the Electoral Coordination Advisory Board, and a final assessment by the Director of Electoral Administration and Guidance, those are both Electoral Commission bodies, they have determined that the errors do not require formal assessment, and they've brought their formal moderation process to a close. They will, however, continue to work with us over the coming weeks so that we can be assured and they can be assured of the steps that we're taking to avoid such errors occurring again in the future, and that will include supporting us and our team with appropriate guidance, support and challenge to create robust plans for future polls. So I just thought I'd provide that update, which isn't contained within your report. Although the two reports, the external one and the internal one, were commissioned independently of one another, as you can see from my covering report, there are a lot of common themes that occur across the two, and I won't read those out. You can read that within the report in terms of those common areas for improvement. And so our next steps is that we are now developing a detailed action plan in order to address all of the issues that are raised by both the external and the internal reports. And subject to your approval tonight, it's my intention that that draft action plan should come to the Joint Audit and Standards Committee so that they can look at that action plan in detail. Finally, and solely because I've got the floor, I thought it would also be useful to confirm to all councillors that our annual electoral registration canvass exercise, that starts this week, and so our electors will be contacted directly by the council to ask them to confirm their details for registration purposes. I mention that because, of course, sometimes when that happens, you also get contacted by electors asking you the question, is this real? Is this from the council and such like? So if you do get any concerns, it should be straightforward, but if any concerns are raised directly with you as councillors by the electorate, please do get in contact with the electoral services team who'll be able to answer those queries. But I'm hoping you don't get any of those because I'm hoping the electorate are more than familiar with that annual exercise now. So I can't clearly move the agenda motion, but would call for a proposer and seconder if you wish to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Arthur. I now need a proposer and a seconder to note the recommendation, which is to note the content of Appendices A and B and request that the Joint Audit and Standards Committee review the draft action plan arising from those reviews. So if you're in agreement, I need a proposer. Councillor Horan, you're proposing, and Councillor McGraw, have you got a question? I'll take it after. Okay, I'll take you as a seconder. Thank you very much, Councillor Beer. Now we move on to questions. So, to you.
I'll do my comments in debate, but question. Before the election and during it, we were concerned all round at the amount of people that would be debarred from voting because they didn't turn up with the appropriate ID. Now, I always go round my polling stations, and I've got 3 in Great Cornard, 2 or 3, 4 times during the course of the day to each one. Met the staff there, asked them how it was going, and particularly that point. And we didn't have too much of a problem in Great Cornard, in all honesty. There was people turned away because they didn't have the appropriate ID. Most of them came back with it, which did surprise me. but there was a lot of hoo-ha saying that people were disenfranchised, they couldn't vote. Do you know what that figure is? That's my question.
Thank you, Councillor. No, off the top of my head I don't, but you are absolutely right. The overall impact of the changes which required voters to bring voter identification to the polling stations was very low. Nationally, that's been reported more broadly. Off the top of my head, it's either 300 or 800, so I'm not going to be quoted on either, and that's the county-wide figure. So that's not our figure, that's for the county as a whole. So yes, if you then extrapolate in terms of Babergh, it is very low. My concerns, just looking ahead to the next elections, is there was a lot of publicity that went with that this time to make sure that electors knew that this change was coming in. Obviously, what we don't know is the number of electors who walked up to the polling station, saw the poster and never came in. We only know the ones that came in, were turned away and came back again. So there is an element to which there's an unknown aspect there. My bigger concern, and yes, I take this opportunity publicly with YouTube to advertise it again, that changes for all future elections, not just for that one just gone. And obviously the turnout for any future general election in particular will be significantly higher. So we will need to continue to increase the publicity, and would request that all of you do as well ahead of all future elections to make sure that voters know this is a permanent change, unless the Electoral Commission or the government decide to change their mind, but it seems unlikely. It's a permanent change, and therefore voters will need to continue to bring identification every time they vote. But yes, impact was low.
Any other questions? Councillor Horan.
Thank you. With due respect, Chairman and Chief Exec, I think the big problem here that those who felt intimidated, who perhaps normally need a bit of encouragement, just didn't bother to turn up at all, and we can't measure that figure. I would put it to you that figure is greater than the ones you might have mentioned. We should be encouraging everybody, especially first-time voters. Sometimes I did come across quite a few people who were aged. They didn't have the documents. They knew they didn't. They should have been quite entitled to vote, but didn't even bother to leave the house. And that is the biggest worry. We need to get the voting figures up. Not put people off. And what can be done about that?
I knew there'd be a question at the end.
I can always put a question.
Absolutely, yes. It is, so it's not within our gift to change the rules, obviously. We simply are the ones who have to deliver the mechanisms as prescribed to us by government. Government has decided that the right approach is to have voter identification. My personal view, for what it's worth, is that it does feel slightly disproportionate. The amount of fraud that was in elections, which is why this has been brought in, is very, very small. Nationally, even smaller in areas such as ours. However, it is the regime, we will implement it. I think the only way in which we can begin to measure exactly what you described, Councillor, is to go back and look at turnout 4 years ago. But that's not the greatest guide, because that was 4 years ago. And certainly I would hope, although I've not seen any indication that this is the case, I would hope that as government reviews, or rather as the Electoral Commission review, and then government does a further review of what forms of identification are acceptable, that a few more forms of documentation might find their way onto that list of acceptable identification. I know anecdotally, for example, we had police officers turning up with warrant cards, trying to use their warrant card as identification. Not an allowed form of identification. Slightly tricky for a presiding officer to tell a police officer they're not allowed to vote. Not ideal. So yes, absolutely, and particularly for younger voters, I think a lot of focus was put on the forms of identification, focusing on the older voters for understandable reason, not proportionately on the younger voters and what forms of identification they may, or more realistically probably don't, have. And so I think that's an area that I would hope is looked at for the future. The other way round is for us to continue to encourage that if you don't hold that form of identification, or any form of identification, of course we are able to provide you with it. But again, we had very low request numbers in terms of the voter authorisation certificate. Again, I would hope with familiarity people become more comfortable with that and may well apply for that document in the future. But it is not the most straightforward of exercises, and nor it's much easier just not to vote, unfortunately. Of course, the best answer all round is to get a postal vote, and then you don't need it.
Councillor Parker.
You've swapped me over. Thank you. Yeah, just a technical question, actually, with regards to the software. There's much mentioned in the report that there was a lack of familiarity around the software, but is that a standard piece of software used by all local authorities, or do we have a piecemeal, not do we have a piecemeal approach, but is there a piecemeal approach nationally?
So as you can imagine, elections is a fairly specialist niche area when it comes to software provision. There are somewhere between 3 or 4 providers nationally. That has been encouraged historically rather than simply having one provider, on the basis that that level of competition encourages innovation and therefore greater product and greater cost savings potentially. So there are about 3 or 4 providers nationally. We switched just ahead of the 2022 elections to the current provider, so we have run elections, not our district and parish elections, but certainly the Police and Crime Commissioner elections and the last county council elections on this software. And yes, you're right, as alluded to within the report, there is a greater need for familiarity in relation to the software. They're all much of a muchness, as you can imagine. Ultimately, they're all making sure that they are consistent with the regulations and the legislation as set out nationally. But at the same time, they each do it ever so slightly differently, and so it is important that our team are as familiar as possible with the software in order to do so. We, as I say, having recently changed, I think we're unlikely to change software provider again. There are also opportunities that existed, for example, with our previous software provider, whereby the postage and printing package is part of the same relationship with the software provider, because as you can imagine, an awful lot with elections hangs actually on paper rather than digital. And if you've got that direct connection between the two elements, both from a financial savings perspective, but also from a risk mitigation perspective, that can be quite helpful. So when we are looking to procurement, we don't just look to the software, we look at the ancillary elements as well.
Any more questions, or can we move to debate? Debate. Councillors, you need to debate on accepting the recommendation. So, does anybody wish to open the debate? Councillor Beer?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Apologies, Mr. Chief Executive, but I cannot remember the name of the election officer that ran the election for us last time. You can tell me his name.
Edward McCready.
Yeah, Edward. Well, he did an excellent job. Many times when I came into the electorate office, he was there single-handed. He did have 1 or 2 people dropping in and out to help him, and he was really rushed off his feet. I felt, and I did say that to him, and I think I may have known to you when I caught you in the corridor there, that he needed more help and staff and assistance. Because at election time, I think it's what you tend to forget, a lot of existing councillors, which perhaps stand for re-election, they go along there and they've got lots of papers that the public want them to hand in for postal voting, wanting forms for this and that and what have you. And we were taking up valuable time requesting all this from him, and he was doing it all by himself, printing them off, getting them for us and what have you. And I really felt that it was poor show that we didn't have more staff helping him. And when I mentioned this to him, he did say he'd got some staff, some of them were working from home. Well, how you can run an election working from home, I don't know. But that didn't seem to help the situation. So, no, in the question, there's a debate now. You did say that. So what I'm saying is, yes, he did an excellent job. I think we ran the elections quite well. I don't think there's any problem there. But there is room for improvement. And if it's more staff you need, perhaps at election time you need to take 1 or 2 on. Thank you.
It's really just a sort of technical point, because I think we could talk about this at length, but it occurs to me that if we do that, we'll actually be preempting the Joint Audit and Standards Committee reviewing the draft action plan. Effectively, we'd just be repeating ourselves. I wonder if perhaps it'd be an idea to draw the debate to an early conclusion.
Riley?
Thank you. Well, ahead of the joint audit survey, I would share with all my colleagues my experience in Pine Wood. My presiding officer, very nice young lady, and this is not a complaint, really a statement, deemed that my wearing this meant I was campaigning for voting and therefore I should not be within the precincts of the voting area, and moreover I should not be campaigning within 200 metres of the polling station. When I asked where this figure came from, she told me it was in the parliamentary bill, and I told her that it was not my policy to take advice or instruction from a parliamentary bill, but of course to obey parliamentary acts. We referred various problems up to next in line. I think finally the presiding officer spoke to the returning officer, and it was then deemed that the polling station precincts included the whole building, and if I wanted to go and wear a rosette, I should sit outside. And fortunately, the weather was nice. The polling station staff provided me with a chair, and I got the job, so I'm not too fussed about it. But what I will say is I did expect a better level of education amongst within my polling station officer. So my suggestion is in this debate that next year we upgrade the education and we upgrade the clarity of the information provided to the staff.
Have a comment, Councillor Ward.
Yeah, I think we need to focus on this particular report and the reasons for it. And we've heard a lot about people's problems with voter ID, and we've just heard about Councillor Riley's rosette. This report is into some of the specific failings, problems with the way that the election team was run, and it comes up with a number of recommendations. It's an excellent, it's a thorough report, and I think it's something we can all learn from for the future. So I'm very happy with what we've got here, and yes, the Ordnance Standards Committee can pick this up going forward. So we need to focus on this report and vote accordingly. Thank you, Chairman.
Yes. I'm reading this report and I'm wondering how computerised the system was in terms of somebody inputs the data, No, it's not so much a question as a point as was the whole system tested properly? Because this is hopefully something I can investigate at Scrutiny, Audit and Scrutiny, because it's a particular area that I've been working in. It's almost AI, but it would help make sure that the problems that we saw wouldn't happen. Yeah, but not to it wasn't to the scale of this, was it?
So again, are you looking for a question and answer, or
I'm just asking. Well, I'd like to know if it was tested properly. This has only just occurred to me.
Okay.
Really.
The returning officer is happy to answer your question.
So, as I alluded to earlier, so the system is a generic one. So in that sense, testing for our council shouldn't particularly be different for testing for another area. However, the setup for our specific election, in this case, elections both for the town, parish and for the district, does require testing. And on page 91 of the report, when the external review confirms the view of the external person, that at future elections the system should be set up and tested much earlier than it was this time. So I absolutely agree.
Councillor Ward, were you wanting to say comment? No. So we can move to the vote? Yes. Yes. So councillors, you know the routine.
Councillors, you will need to page down for this vote. It is going to be turning blue. Thank you. Councillor Riley.
Noted. Thank you.
Are we done? Just wait.
Chair, that is unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We now move on to councillor appointments. The appointments are listed on the agenda. I don't believe there are any further changes, or do we ask for change? Unless anybody wants to change, come off, go on, move.
So you just need a proposer and a seconder then as well.
But I do need a proposer and a seconder on the list that is in your packs.
He's proposing.
So, Councillor Busby's proposing. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Jameson.
Just go straight to the vote.
Okay, and that goes straight to a vote.
Just a quick question.
Yeah.
Which is appropriate since Lee seconded. I'm not certain who's sub and who's the lead on the Ipswich strategic, whatever it is, thingy that we're both on. Because in the minutes it said, I think you were sub, whereas I think I am. So it's either Pistols or Dawn, or you take the lead.
Councillor, I think it should be Councillor Busby. You should be the lead, and with Councillor Jameson's sub. So if we can have that clarification. I wasn't advising. I was telling you, Councillor. Thank you.
Have we accepted that? Good.
Councillor Riley is seconder, so we can go straight to the vote.
Thank you very much.
That is now in progress for councillors to cast their vote. Councillor Riley, can I take your vote?
I agree.
Thank you. Chair, that is unanimous again. Thank you.
Okay, we now move to motions on notice. To consider the motion on notice received from Councillor Jameson. Councillor, would you like to move your motion?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I won't try to keep this fairly brief if I can. The motion is there in two parts as per the table papers rather than the agenda. Firstly, back in 2019, we, along with many councils across the country, declared a climate emergency. This was followed shortly by a declaration of biodiversity emergency. And as Councillor Holt pointed out earlier, since then a lot of good work has been undertaken successfully. However, since May we've had 14 new councillors, and it would be nice if we could bring this back today just to get the new councillors to reiterate their commitment to this declaration. So that's the first part of the motion. The second part is for us, this council, to sign up to the UK 100. Now, the UK 100 is a network of highly ambitious local councils across the country who seek to devise and implement plans for the transition to clean energy, plans that are ambitious, cost-effective, and take the public and business with them. Now, there's lots of councils, including Suffolk, that have signed up to this. It's free to sign up. There's no cost involved. All we have to do is commit to a pledge to work and to learn and to improve our ambitions for getting to carbon neutral. So it would be a great thing for this council to take advantage of the knowledge that's involved in this group to help us and to help them with their plans. So that's the two parts of the motion. One is to reiterate our declaration of climate and biodiversity emergencies, and to sign up to the UK 100. Thank you.
Your seconder is Councillor Potter.
Yes,
Yep.
I can confirm this.
Thank you. We'll now move to the debate. Councillors will only be allowed to speak once for 3 minutes, and this will be timed. Councillor Maybury.
Thank you very much. My group here have actually looked at this. We had no issue at all with page 1, but we cannot agree to page 2. The reasons being, we are a very rural area that's already been talked about this evening by Fiona, who's now disappeared. I looked up for her and she's gone. It's not possible to achieve what some other councils achieve because we do not have the transportation. I've been in London this week and moving around London so much easier because there are buses, green buses, there are green trains, and it's so much easier. We can't do it so much here because of our rural area. So we would agree to page 1, but we would not agree to page 2. Thank you.
The understanding these concerns, but if we sign up to the UK 100, it also allows us to join the UK 100 Countryside Climate Network, which is aimed at rural councils like ours. So, yes, I know we haven't got the facilities and the power of city councils, but there is a group within this UK 100 aimed at rural councils like ours.
Anybody else wish to enter the debate? Councillor Register.
Yes. The whole point of having a sustainable travel action plan for the whole area is to link villages to towns. You don't have to do it along the roads. You could do it using bridle paths, footpaths, boats, however you like. It works. It's been done elsewhere, and it could be done in Babergh. It could link your ward, Councillor Maybury, Lavenham to Sudbury. It could be done. I've already done work on that route. It would cost a lot of money, and it won't be done quickly because it's going to take 5 to 10 years to actually achieve the funding to do that, but it can be done. We also need much better public transport, and we need hopper buses or some other mechanism. The technology is changing. We can't guess what those mechanisms are now. People are working out systems all around the world on how to get people to move in rural areas using public transport that don't involve double-decker buses. So, yeah, it can be done. It's just, and we could quite easily become part of the UK 100.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Riley, I didn't notice you, but you did put your hand up, so please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, this motion indicates that since July 2019, 4 years ago, there's been no improvement in the climate or biodiversity emergencies. Moreover, our new councillors are asked to reiterate once again the commitment to make our services carbon neutral by 2030, which we've already covered. What I'm unable to understand is why in the last 4 years there's been no improvement, and what have we been doing as a council, and how far have we advanced on the target of being carbon neutral by 2030. Again, you see the other paper, 2310, but should have been here. As far as this motion is concerned, this is a commitment without any understanding as to where we are now, how much we've spent, how much we're going to spend, and where we're going to spend it, and how will it be financed. It's lacking any coherence or meaningful purposes. All I see here is an unyet disclosed pathway to pillaging the taxpayers' pockets to pay for this commitment, which is why I'm unable to support this motion. This motion is merely persiflage. It's a waste of time, air, and good trees. It is weak, insipid, and has no place in coming to this assembly. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Oh, I do have. Councillor McGraw and then Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Chair. It's very kind of you. I'm a little surprised and taken aback by the comment from Councillor Riley just there. Persiflage, no less. I notice that he appears to believe that the fact that there's no improvement in the climate or biodiversity emergencies does not imply that nothing has changed, as he seems to think. It implies that there still is such an emergency, or rather two emergencies. They're not going away. And I was also disappointed to note from Councillor Maybury that the Conservative group will not be supporting the additional wording for the UK 100 cross-party membership. Interesting, because one of the things we always spend our time doing is being annoyed that we are not able to engage with national government at a significant level. We all know that dealing with this is going to require national decisions. When we make decisions as a district council, we have less influence than a county council or a group of county. Well, this is 100 at least, and I suspect it'll be a great deal more than 100. And I also note it's peculiar that the Conservative, the party across the floor, aren't prepared to support something that Suffolk County Council have signed up for. Because in the wording it actually states, agree on priorities for legislative and regulatory change while empowering them to engage with national decision makers. Isn't that what we're supposed to be doing? And frankly, isn't that what a Conservative party, a Conservative administration at Suffolk County Council should be doing with a Conservative government? I mean, please, let's join the things up a little bit. So I will be supporting this extension. I don't know if it's possible to vote for half of the motion and not vote for the other half. Effectively, what we're doing, for the benefit of the new councillors perhaps, is we're renewing our vows. Is that a fair way of putting it? But, I mean, I'm saying I like that bit and not that bit. I mean, you can't just take it aside. You either vote for it or you don't vote for it. But frankly, most of the Conservatives in this room today have voted for all the other things. And I can't see any problem with the additional wording and already approved by County Council, a Conservative County Council.
Thank you, Councillor McCraw. Now, Councillor Parker.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, and I can be brief again because Councillor McCraw has asked many of the questions. But in terms of resource, how will this actually be resourced? If we sign up to this, who's actually doing the work? Is it member engagement? Is it officer engagement? And just as a comment, dare I say, actually, oddly, paradoxically, I don't think actually the second part of that is passionate enough. You know, if it says that we're not obliged to take on any of the policies that are suggested, I think we should be even more ambitious and say that we should be looking to take on some of those policies if we're serious about making a change. So, thank you.
Debate. Councillor Horan.
Yes, thank you, Chairman, Councillors. I think we should all be leading and setting an example. I really do. Some years back, when I realised how urgent this all was, I tore up my passport and adopted no-fly zone for myself. But the number of times, and sometimes within this chamber, people said, oh, I just popped over to Portugal, I went for a holiday in Spain. What are you not realising? The biggest polluter is air travel. Travel in total is worth about 75% of the pollution that we're now suffering from. The worst is air travel, so why are we still flying? I don't mind airplanes carrying vegetables or medical supplies, and if they can stick a few people in the holds as well, that's all well and good. But we should not be just using it as a weekend trip. There's even been examples of councillors. I can remember about 8 years ago, one councillor was constantly flying to a place far away beginning with C. Must have been Cleethorpes, I think, or maybe even further. Can somebody remind me of where that was? Carolina. Oh, was it North Carolina? Even further, wasn't it? So I think my point is, please let's show a real bit of leadership and stop being hypocrites, please, because if we don't, well, we're all doomed, literally. So let's have a bit of responsibility right across the political spectrum, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Horan. I've got Councillor Holt. Councillor Beer, you've spoken already? Councillor Beer, no, you haven't. And Councillor Newman. And then I think everybody would like to go to the vote.
I think you were looking for Cyprus.
No, no.
Because that's where I went this year and had a very nice time. There's a lot of us do use air travel. It's a fundamental privilege and it's an essential part of our economy as well. So you have to be careful what you wish for. There's lots have been spoken about travel and our rural location. And there's a lot of excitement from over here about the prospect of us not using our cars and relying on public transport, but it's all cuckoo. It's not going to come in my lifetime, I don't think, and I hope to live for another 30 years. We have to live in the here and now, we have to look to the future and protect our planet, don't get me wrong. But we have to be realistic on our location and what our ambitions are as a district council. And I just think we need to take a breath and think about what we're proposing. Because we can talk all day long about what we want, what we hope to achieve. The money has to come from somewhere, the will has to come from somewhere, and at the moment the public aren't willing, I believe, to give up their car, to give up their privilege to use that facility and walk and cycle from Glemsford, from Stansted, from Lawshall, from Shimplin, from Somerton, from Boxted, Hartest, I don't know if I mentioned them, sorry Hartest, from the 7 parishes that I represent, it's too much. And the investment required to provide a service for those people to get on transport, to go to Sudbury, to go to Bury, is beyond this district council, beyond the county council, and beyond the government of here, any government. The investment is too big and too great. We have to do our bit, little bits at a time, and I back that, but we have to be realistic in our ambitions.
Oh, this is for Bryn. Bryn should try cruising. It's very nice, and you can go from Southampton. You don't even have to fly.
Well, Madam Chairman, just following on from Councillor Holt, he's said all the things that I would have said, but we have a love affair with the motor car, and you're not going to change that. We Conservatives are the friend of the motorists. I'm afraid some of you, when I look around this room, are not. And to suggest you've torn up your passport, I don't intend to tear my passport up. I will fly like the millions of other Britons, hard-working British people who go on holiday for all sorts of reasons and fly. And they're not going to thank you for some of this. So just remember that. And at the end of the day, as my friend here says, I done a cruise earlier this year, you can go cruising. But the bottom line is that the motorist is definitely here to stay. You've got to work with them. And some of the ideas that you try to push forward just won't work. Thank you.
Yeah, I've listened to what Councillor Beer and Councillor Holt have just said, and I'm finding it difficult to reconcile that with the motion we have in front of us. This motion is not about wearing hair shirts, it's not about getting rid of cars, it's not about stopping us going abroad, although I think the Mediterranean is probably not the best place to go at the moment. All this is doing is reaffirming the commitments that this council made prior to the election in terms of our biodiversity action plan and our sustainable transport plan. It's doing nothing more than that. It's not saying we've got to give up our cars and we can't fly anywhere. I just feel that the debate is getting away from what we have in front of us. Yeah. I'm quite happy with this motion as it stands. It's just a continuation and a reaffirmation of what we were already doing.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. Now I think we can move to Councillor Jameson for summing up. And perhaps in your summing up, you might be able to address where the money's coming from. Just a little bit. I'll leave you to your summing up.
Change I've got. Well, I'll say, just quickly, Councillor Ward summed up a lot of what I was saying. The second part, the joining the UK 100, is about building ambitious plans. Councillor Holt has got a point. It is challenging in a rural area to get away from the car, and cars, as pointed out, are not going to go away very quickly. But unless you have ambitious goals, unless you have targets, you're never going to get anywhere. You're just going to sit still. So fair enough, it's not going to happen. It probably won't happen in our lifetime, as you say, may not. But unless we try to do these things, unless we try to get somewhere, and working with other councils, you might find ideas, ambitious plans, ways of doing things that we've not even thought of yet. So there might be possibilities that we can do. Yes, so that's basically the motion is, as was said previously by other councillors, it's reiterating where we were. I don't have the money on myself, but if we also work with other councils and the government to find ways, we may be able to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. We now go to the vote. So you all know the routine.
Thank you, Chair. That is now showing in blue for councillors to cast their vote. Councillor Riley, can I take your vote, please?
I abstain.
Thank you. Chair, that is 24 votes for, 3 against and 2 abstentions.
Thank you. So that's carried. Thank you very much. We now move on to consider the motion on notice received from Councillor Ward. Councillor Ward, would you like to move your motion? And I understand Councillor Busby is your seconder.
That's correct. Thank you, Chairman. Last item. We're nearly at the end. Before proposing this motion, I would just like to briefly remind members of the history behind it. In order to increase grid transmission capacity to accommodate the demand for electricity in the future and the new energy generating capacity provided by offshore wind farms, National Grid Electricity Transmission has embarked on a major programme known as the Great Grid Upgrade. Part of this is a project to connect the electricity from offshore East Anglian wind farms using 180 kilometres of high voltage cables supported by pylons from Norwich via Bramford to Tilbury. Along with all county and district councils affected by this project, Babergh has publicly stated its opposition and preference for a strategic offshore grid to support all offshore generation and the interconnectors to mainland Europe. Babergh and Mid-Suffolk district councils stated our position in a joint response to last summer's first non-statutory consultation, and will be doing so again for the current second non-statutory consultation. The then leader of Mid-Suffolk and I followed this up with a letter to Greg Hands MP, then Minister of State at the former Bays Department. We also wrote directly to the Senior Project Manager at NGET. Now, I do want to remind members that everyone agrees that the network must be upgraded. The debate is about how. East Anglia will bear the largest brunt of the new offshore wind capacity, and the impact will be greatest on our environment, so we must get the supporting infrastructure right. To conclude, this motion, which is going to both councils this week, will send a message to our communities, government and NGET that reinforces our formal consultation response. A similar motion will also be going to Colchester City Council tomorrow. So I'd like to propose the motion as presented in the papers. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. We'll now move to debate. Councillor Busby, you have seconded this, have you not?
I have.
You have. Thank you. Mayor? Well, you're entering debate.
No, Chairman, I wish to propose an amendment to this motion.
Can that happen, you know? Yeah, okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The amendment is, and it's not too wordy, you're all okay. The end of the second paragraph to read, the last two lines, construction activities to effectively minimise and mitigate harm to Suffolk's communities, environment and tourism. And the beginning of the next paragraph, it should be whilst the council. The idea behind this amendment is that our district is very important for tourism, and we should acknowledge that. Lavenham's been mentioned several times tonight, and I will reiterate, and perhaps the new councillors do not know, but Lavenham on its own provides £7.5 million to the district from tourism. And I think tourism should be added to give more credence to what is being proposed here. Thank you. Oh, I'm proposing it, and a seconder.
Councillor Beer, are you seconding?
Yes, I'll second it.
Thank you.
I totally agree. I don't think that's going to make much difference to your motions, just add in the word tourism.
Okay. I mean that. Councillor Ward, do you accept that?
Yeah, I think so. Although I think the motion itself is that part of it's relating specifically to the construction impact on the harm to our communities and the environment, because there will be significant construction harm to the environment. I'm not necessarily sure to what extent tourism is going to be affected by either the construction or indeed the presence of the pylons, where they're going to be pylons, or the underground trenches, where they're going to be underground trenches. Tourism is a long-term benefit to our district. It's a long-term part of our economy, and will outlive the...
So do you accept it?
Oh, well, I'm being persuaded to say yes, but... oh, go on then. Yeah, why not?
But not the whilst. But not the whilst.
Oh, yeah, not. I think the whilst is probably while is just as grammatically correct as whilst, so we can keep that.
Whilst is the abbreviation of while it is, or at least it was when I was at school. Right. Now.
So we need to.
Has he accepted in its entirety?
Yes.
Including whilst?
Have you accepted it
Yes.
in its entirety, including whilst?
We'll just take the tourism.
Chair, you can't do that. You've got to either accept the amendment as it's tabled or not accept it. You can't take part of it.
We'll accept it as tabled.
Thank you very much. Lovely. Now what do I do? Now we debate.
You can take it. It's now become the substantive motion, so we just go to debate. Yeah.
Okay, so it's now become the substantive motion and we go to debate.
We can go to the vote. Chair.
Go to the vote?
Okay.
Lovely. Even better.
Have you changed it? So, Chair, that has now been changed to agree motion on notice proposed by Councillor Ward, including the amendment proposed by Councillor Maybury. So if you can cast your votes, please. Thank you. Councillor Riley.
Approved.
Thank you. Councillor Davies, are you having problems? Would you like me to take your vote manually? Okay, lovely, thank you. Chair, that is a unanimous vote for.
Thank you very much. Wonderful. And now, the next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, 19th of September at 5:30 p.m. And this meeting is now closed.